Hey folks, welcome to another Passion for Sound audio review. Today we're looking at the last of the 3 Simgot earphones that I've been reviewing lately, and that means it's the EM2 on show today. The EM2 retails for roughly $100 on Amazon, so it's about $50 less than its more expensive big brother, the EN700 Pro, but it comes with an extra driver compared to the EN700 Pro. So I was really interested to consider how it compared to both its bigger brother, but also some other well-known options on the market. So first and foremost, the packaging for the EM2 is almost identical to the EN700 Pro. So it comes in this black retail box. There's an inner sleeve here, or the box itself I should say, sits inside. And inside that you have the same basic accessories as the EN700 Pro. And what that means you're getting is a cable, which I'll talk about shortly. You're getting a nice little leather case with a flip up magnetic closing lid, the earphones themselves of course, and 2 sets of tips. Now I've spoken about the tips that Simgot provide in my other 2 reviews as well, and that's because they provide 2 sets of tips designed to tune the earphones differently. One set has a larger hole through the middle of the ear tip for greater treble response, while the other is a smaller hole through the middle of the tip, and that's for better bass response. They do make a difference. It's only subtle, but you can definitely hear the change. So from my point of view, the accessories are just right. There's nothing I'm left wanting, and everything provided is of high quality. So once again, like the EN700 Pro and the MT3 that I previously reviewed, the cable is really high quality. It's a nice braid. It's got discrete channels for your positive and negative for both left and right. There's really nothing more that you could want from it. In the case of the pair I have here, which are in the light sort of champagne gold color, it's also finished with accents that match the earphones themselves, which is quite nice. So while we're talking about the cable, let's talk a bit more about the design of the earphones and start with the cable specifically. It's a 2-pin cable for these, and it's a 2-pin in a recessed fashion, which means that the pins are protected from potential damage. Now, I've spoken about this in my other reviews. I personally prefer a normal 2-pin connector where you can buy aftermarket cables and you can tweak the sound, you can tweak the look and feel of the cable. I prefer that personally than this little bit of protection. I've never had an issue with breaking cables. I don't know if any of the viewers have. Please let me know if you have had that issue before, but for me, I've never needed it, and I'd personally prefer an exposed 2-pin. That said, these cables are really good quality, so I don't have any issues with not being able to change it easily. Moving on in the design, the earphones themselves are really nicely designed. The shell, in the case of the ones I have here, is clear with the champagne gold accents. The shape and size of the shells is really small and ergonomic, meaning that it fits really nicely in the ear and it's extremely comfortable to wear. I also kind of like the fact that you can see the drivers in the EM2s. It's just a little thing, but I do enjoy seeing what's making the music. And you can see the dynamic driver in the back of the shell, and the balanced armature just sits at the front edge in line with the nozzle. So that's quite cool if you want to be able to see what's happening inside your earphones. Now let's talk a bit more about the components themselves. The EM2 uses the exact same driver as the one found in the EN700 Pro, which is the flagship I recently reviewed and loved. Still love. What's different about the EM2 though is that the dynamic driver has then been paired up with a balanced armature driver. The combination of the dynamic and balanced armature drivers is an attempt to get the best of both worlds. Balanced armatures are known for their speed and their precision and clarity, whereas dynamics are known more for their naturalness, particularly in the bass registers. In a lot of cases, hybrid designs like this, I've found, get really imbalanced. They tend to have really sharp piercing treble and sometimes overwhelming bass with a bit of a cavity in the middle for the mid-range. I was really interested to see how Simgot's approach to this was going to differ, because what they've done is they've wired up the dynamic driver and the balanced armature to run full range. So both drivers are doing everything from your bass all the way through to your treble. With a lot of hybrids, what they try to do is use the dynamic driver for bass into mid and then pick up the mids through treble with the balanced armature. And that's often where you get the imbalances in the signature. The approach that Simgot take is quite brave, because it does mean you've got frequencies overlapping between the drivers, and that can sometimes cause frequency imbalances where you get peaks or spikes where there's different frequency response from each driver. but it could also work in their favor where you don't have that hole in the middle where the crossover occurs. And I'll talk about that in a moment as to how the actual tuning of this does work. So without further delay, why don't we see how it actually sounds? sound from the EM2s is really enjoyable. It's clean, it's crisp, it's got plenty of detail retrieval, and for the $100 price tag, it is a really good performer. I've got a couple of comparisons I'll talk about shortly, but first let's talk about the EM2 on its own in isolation. Starting with the bass, as you'd expect if you've watched the EN700 Pro review and the MT3 review, because all three units use the same dynamic driver, they all carry very similar bass properties, and that's fantastic because the bass quality is excellent. It's punchy, it's clean, it's got good body and weight to it, it's just really enjoyable. It seems to me they've tuned the driver a little bit differently in the EM2 compared to the EN700 Pro. The bass isn't quite as smooth and full, and that may be partly due to the fact that you've got the balanced armature also contributing some of the bass to the overall signature. And that might just be muddying the waters a little bit in the bass compared to the EN700 Pro. These are still really good, they're just not quite as good as the EN700 Pro in that regard. The mid-range on these is also strong, but unlike the MT3 and the EN700 Pro, I'd say that these are tuned less with mid-range in mind. The mid-range takes a backseat to the treble and the bass. It's not way off in the distance and recessed, it's just not as prominent as it is in the other earphones. So think of this as more of a V-shaped sound signature, a subtle V-shaped sound signature, rather than a pushed forward mid and bass signature. The quality of the mid-range that's there is very good. Again, it doesn't quite stack up to the EN700 Pro, and I think it's because the mixed tonalities coming from both the balanced armature and the dynamic driver, but it is still very, very good, and I'll talk about a different comparison later to give you an illustration of just where it sits in things, but it is extremely good. Finally, let's talk about the treble. With the extra addition of the balanced armature in the EM2s, it really pulls the detail out of the treble. The treble's sparkly, it's clear, it feels like it extends further than something like the EN700 Pro. I don't know if it actually does or if it's just the way the balanced armature is presenting the sound, but definitely it feels like it's pulling more details out of the treble in the music. On the other hand though, it's bringing a little bit of dryness to the sound by having that balanced armature there. The treble is quite dry and analytical. It's not so much a smooth treble, and some people are going to really love that. Some people not so much. For me, I tend to prefer a slightly more musical sound, whereas these start to get more into the analytical space, which I know many of you out there will love. And so with that in mind, these could be a really good option because that balanced armature brings that extra level of analytics and detail to the sound. It just comes at a little cost of musicality, but it's not swinging all the way into analytical territory. It's still an enjoyable musical earphone, but it's got an analytical hint to it compared to the other earphones from Simgot, which tend to be pure musicality and enjoyment. In terms of the Soundstage, it's not huge, but it's very well defined. It's very clear. The music tends to be closer to you than something like the EN700 Pro. So in the EN700 Pro, it's quite holographic, it's quite spacious. When I listen to the EM2s, it's more of an intimate sound. The sound's brought closer to you, but it's still very well defined and very well laid out. It just doesn't have as much of a sense of space as something like the EN700 Pro. In my experience, I'd define the Soundstage from the EM2 as probably better than average, but it's not going to set the world on fire. It's a different tuning, it's more of an intimate tuning. So to put this in perspective, let's have a look at a couple of comparisons. First up, I've got the Shure SE215s. These are a long-standing stalwart in the audiophile community. They're often a recommendation as the first earphone for someone looking for that upgrade from basic earbuds with their mobile phone, for instance, and they're a great earphone. They retail at about the same price as the EM2, so around about $100 US on Amazon, and they're an extremely good earphone. In terms of which one I prefer, it's pretty easy and clear cut that the EM2s are better for me. The sound from the Shures gets a little bit too dry and a little bit too raspy sometimes, and it just clouds some of the sense of detail. With the EM2s on the other hand, going from the Shures to the EM2s, there is just a sudden sense that a veil's been lifted. The tonality is very similar, but the EM2s just do everything better. They are clearer, they are crisper, the bass is equally as present, and the soundstage is better because of the way the EM2s have been tuned. So from my point of view, if you were looking to spend around $100 US, the EM2s are a really easy recommendation. But what if you had an extra $50 to spend? What if your budget could stretch to 150 US instead of 100 US? All of a sudden, you're going to be comparing Simgot's own EN700 Pros with the baby brother EM2. So is it worth spending that extra 50 US? To answer that, it does come down to two things. One of them is, are you looking for a brighter sound signature? As you will have seen if you've watched the review of the EN700 Pros, they're a warmer, smoother musical sound. That doesn't appeal to all people. So if you like a brighter sound, if you enjoy a V-shaped sound, don't spend the extra 50 US, go straight for the EM2s because they're fantastic for that signature style. However, if you do like a bit more sense of space and you like musicality in your audio, I do think the EN700 Pros are just a touch more refined and their sense of space and holographic presentation is stronger than the EM2. So that's really what you're paying for. For that extra $50, you're getting a little bit more refinement, a little bit more space in the soundstage, but you're also going into a more musical sound signature. So if you prefer to stick with the more revealing analytical type sound, you're probably going to prefer the EM2. Save the 50 bucks and spend it on something else. So to summarize all this, for a $100 US earphone, it's really hard to go past the EM2s. They are comfortable, they come with quality accessories, a great cable, they look good, they sound great, they've got a nice balance of being a little bit V-shaped but not going too far, so they give you great detail retrieval, great dynamics, but they're not pushing into dry, sibilant sound. They're just a good all-round earphone that comfortably outperforms a long-standing direct competitor in the SC215s. So if you're looking to spend around $100 US and you enjoy that style of sound, it's really a simple decision to pick up a pair of EM2s. Now, if the EM2s sound like an earphone that you'd be interested in, there are two things I need to tell you. One of them is, I've placed a link down below, it's an affiliate link to Amazon, and it really helps me to keep videos coming to you if you can click on that link if you do decide to purchase. It doesn't cost you anything and it helps bring a little bit of income into this channel. However, if you'd like a free pair of EM2s, I'm actually going to be giving this pair away. In order to win this pair of EM2s, all you need to do is subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment down below about the products that you'd like to see reviewed in the future. You can put 1, you can put 5, that doesn't matter. All you need to do is leave a relevant comment and be a subscriber. I'll announce the winner in the comments thread in about a week's time and get them out to you as soon as possible from there. If you found this review helpful and you'd like to see more, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and we'll look forward to seeing you again here on Passion for Sound.